Austrians will be going back into a full national lockdown from Monday as the government decides to make COVID-19 vaccinations mandatory from February. It follows a surge in coronavirus cases. More than 15,000 were reported in the last 24 hours. Austria's vaccination uptake is one of the lowest in Western Europe. Non-essential shops will close, people will have to work from home, and some schools will shut. Next week's measures will be reassessed after 10 days, but look set to last at least double that. Chancellor Alexander Schallenberg says it's the only way to contain the health emergency.
For a long time, the political consensus was that we don't want a vaccine mandate in this country. But we have to look reality in the eye. For a long time, maybe too long, me and others thought that it must be possible to convince people in Austria, to convince them to get vaccinated voluntarily. Increasing the vaccination rate, and I think we're all in agreement on this, is our only way to break out of this vicious cycle of viral waves and lockdown discussions for good. We don't want a fifth wave, we don't want a sixth and seventh wave.
Johannes Plaschberger says a huge anti-vaccination protest is planned against these new restrictions.
This makes Austria, next to the Vatican, the first country in Europe to impose such a measure. Obviously, there has been an outstir among anti-vaccine protesters, such as the Austrian Freedom Party, which has announced a major demonstration in Vienna city center tomorrow, Saturday, with supposedly more than 10,000 people attending. Meanwhile, the Austrian Medical Association has praised the government for taking these measures, not just the mandatory vaccination, but also the lockdown for everyone, which will come into effect this Monday. Because according to these medical experts, there was no other measure available to fight the rising new infections. Because daily there have been record highs of new infections in Austria, and the situation in hospitals, especially in the Salzburg and Upper Austria regions, remains critical. Johannes Plaschberger, Millstätter See in Carinthia region, Austria, for Euronews.
Well, across the border from Austria, in Bavaria, all Christmas markets have now been cancelled because of the surge in coronavirus infections. A full lockdown will also be implemented in areas where the COVID-19 incident rate is over 1,000 per 100,000 people. Currently, it will affect at least 8 districts. Clubs, bars and all restaurants will also be shut for 3 weeks in the southern German state, but schools will remain open. But across Bavaria, a de facto lockdown for unvaccinated people will begin. State Premier Markus Söder is calling for mandatory vaccinations.
Alongside the low vaccination rate, and let's be honest here, carelessness and the lack of solidarity are the main reasons. For a long time we've taken care of the unvaccinated. Now we have to take less care of those who do not care at all. This is not fun. It's one of the hardest things to decide, but it's necessary. What drives us and moves us is a concern for the life of the people and our state, Bavaria.
Over in Hungary, wearing masks indoors and in enclosed spaces will become mandatory from Saturday. It will also be compulsory for healthcare staff to receive a booster jab. More than 11,000 new coronavirus cases have been recorded in the last day, the highest level of infections so far in the country. Authorities say the fourth wave could peak later this month or early December. For a third day in a row, Russia has reported a record number of coronavirus deaths. More than 1,250 people died in the last 24 hours as infections continue to rise. In total, more than 260,000 people have died, the highest number in Europe. That's despite the number of cases falling.